Welcome back to the Broncos Faction podcast, where you get all your need to know news, hot takes, and random thoughts in 10 minutes or less. So, as always, let's dive in. So, today we're going to review my first mock draft. I usually wait until about a week or two after free agency opens to do my first mock, since usually a lot of stuff seems to change. That's just a given. Depending on who your team signs in free agency right off the bat, or other guys that just disappear from free agencies to other teams, it's going to kind of dictate your strategy going into the draft. That's pretty normal way of thinking. I know a lot of the local radio guys, they get on it right away because they got to fill some airtime, and so they're on there right after the season ends in January. But I like to wait a little while. I like to do my evaluation during that time and then get into the mock about this time every year. So let's jump into it. Like I said, I just did the first 3 rounds. After that, you kind of go with maybe some guys, some smaller college type guys, or guys in the area that you've seen play more. You kind of go off script. It's picking maybe a need, maybe just a guy that you've had in for your visits that you like. Obviously, this year being a little different without being able to get in for those visits, but like I said, I just focused on the first 3 rounds. That's really where you're looking at your contributors for this next season. So. To start off, I went on thedraftnetwork.com, did their simulated mock draft where all the other teams are picked for you, and then you just plug yours in. So no trades, nothing like that. So straight up, pick number 15, we went wide receiver with Jerry Jeudy. So I think everyone can agree Judy's one of the top 3 guys, him, CeeDee Lamb, Henry Ruggs III. The way this simulation went, Ruggs was on there right up until the 12th pick and went to Oakland, and then CeeDee Lamb right after that to San Francisco. So I think if you get into the draft and you really, John Elway and those guys really want one of those guys, and you're a couple picks away, there's some talks going on about trying to trade up for them, things like that. But again, all 3 of them are pretty solid, so if you get there, you're feeling really good that, hey, we're getting one of those 3. That being said, I know a lot of people are looking at wanting to shore up that offensive line at the tackle spot. In this simulation, again, who knows how the real draft will go. Trades obviously dictate a lot of that, but just straight up here, the first tackle was Tristan Wirfs off the board at number 5 to the Dolphins, and we'll get into that later and some strategy stuff that I don't think is too far off. At first, I thought it was crazy, but we'll talk about that at the end real quick. So you lost Wirfs at 5, then Mekhi Becton at 8, then Andrew Thomas at 10, Jedrick Wills at 11. So you're still 4 picks away by the time that last number 4 tackle is off the board. So, could you have gone for a Josh Jones out of Houston? Yeah, you could have, but in this simulation, he actually went all the way down to 27. So, again, depends what you see, what you like. Given that one of the top 3 receivers is on the board, I think you have to jump there. It's one of the positions of need. Everybody knows that. So, especially if it's Jerry Jeudy. If it's Ruggs, maybe I'm a little I just have a different opinion on him. Speed guys, slot guys in particular, don't always work out for you. I think you can find that position somewhere else, but Jerry Jeudy's as solid as they get as far as route running, and just I see him being the best future out of those 3 guys. So I would jump on him. So not much more to put with that one. So fast forward to round 2, pick 46, the Broncos' next pick. Go with another Alabama guy, fill another need. Going cornerback with Trayvon Diggs. Stephon Diggs' little brother. 3rd-team All-American out of Alabama. Big-bodied corner. He's listed at 6'1", 205. Got good arm span, wingspan, good movement. They compare him on NFL.com to Aqib Talib. As I watch his film, he does do some things really well. He's got good ball skills, a lot of pass breakups, very versatile. He started off college playing offense, defense, and special teams. So tried the wide receiver thing, even had a touchdown there, but ended up going year 2 straight to defense, and obviously worked out for him. So a guy that obviously I'm sure him and his brother line up at home and get some work in the off season. So he's worked against elite NFL receivers, but also just being from the SEC, playing against some guys like a Justin Jefferson, guys like that on a regular basis, week in, week out. So, fills a need, gives you that number 3 corner that can work into that starting role. You're not reaching for him. You're taking the guy that's there. One of the themes that I've talked about before is what the Broncos have been able to do in the offseason and some of the key pieces that they have by being able to see a preview of Drew Lock and not having to chase the quarterback thing and have that question mark up there. If you hadn't played him at all this year, you might be looking at one of those QBs just because you don't know. But I think they have a decent idea. At least they're going to ride with him for this year. So, again, a few other positions, given that all the best tackles are off the board before we even get your chance to pick, gives you that, hey, let's go with the best available. So I know a lot of people are of the way of thinking that, hey, we're going to draft offense, pay defense. Saw a little bit of that. Obviously, Melvin Gordon threw a wrench in that with free agency, but you get into the draft here, I think you're looking at best available for the needs that you have, and he fits one of those. And like I said, I think he's got a good future. Those Alabama DBs usually tend to work out. So going into the third round, pick 77, going offensive tackle out of Georgia, Isaiah Wilson. So I've watched quite a bit of film on this guy. He's big body, 6'6", 350, so huge. Did really well for them. Obviously, Georgia was a contender there and had some good competition on a weekly basis, kind of like we talked about with Diggs. So, not the quickest guy. Obviously, he's carrying around 350 pounds, but for a big guy, still pretty decent. Able to get to the second level as I watched his film. His drops, not great. He misses some blitzers here and there, but, being that right tackle guy, which is where he played with Georgia, did really well. So he'd be backing up your Juwan James. Obviously could fit in at that left tackle if you needed. But it's not the solution you wanted at tackle going into this, but given what gets taken off the board early in this case, in this simulation, leaves you with something. You're getting something out of it. You're getting a guy that, if something were to happen with Bowles or James this next year, you have a guy that can step in and help you out. And you still have Wilkinson on your team, another guy that's versatile. So, like I said, fills a need, best available at that time for third round. The quality you get there, that's pretty good. So, we had 3 picks in the third round. So the second pick in the third round for the Broncos is pick 83. I go linebacker here. Linebacker out of Oregon, Troy Dye. A little bit smaller frame, about 230, listed at 6'3", 231. Pretty raw, plays a little high, but he does some good upfield movement. Moving when the ball's going to the outside, you see him really good steps, good base, moving upfield, but does play a little high when he gets to contact. It can be manhandled by those bigger guys. For being a smaller guy, he's not the best pass covers, but again, he's long, he's tall, he can run with them. So I think you have to look at what you're trying to compete with in the AFC West. So being able to get a linebacker that can run with a tight end and give you some drops, and he'll get better at that. But again, for a third round guy, it's not a Kenneth Murray, but again, you're in the third round. So getting a linebacker that can play some special teams, that can develop, I think is huge. And especially in the way the league is right now, you got to get a guy that isn't just a middle of the pack run stopper type guy. It's just not the way the game is played anymore. So that's my second pick in the third round, pick 83, going to pick 95 when the Broncos are back on the board. We go for an interior D lineman out of LSU, Rashard Lawrence. So Rashard Lawrence, another huge guy, 6'2", 308, good at playing in the middle. He's a guy that just eats up blocks. Not the best as far as, a lot of times it's leaning against the guy across from him, but not afraid to just take on double teams and free up those guys around him. Was named a captain as a sophomore. So, obviously some good leadership there on a team that ends up winning the national championship his last year. So, has some good moments where he was a player of the year in the Fiesta Bowl. He had 4 tackles for loss, 2 sacks in the game against UCF. This last year had 28 tackles, 6 for loss, 2.5 sacks, 3 pass breakups. So obviously contributor on a national championship team. So a lot of good things there to pair alongside with Jarrell Casey, with Shelby Harris coming back, free those guys up and give them some spells. So fills your need there. Again, it's not one of those guys that we saw up at the top of the draft, but for end of the third round, he's definitely going to be somebody that you're happy to have on your team. So very SEC heavy picks here. 4 out of the 5 for the first 3 rounds for me. But again, I think you're getting some good quality there, and you're going to miss on a few. That's just how it goes. But overall, you're getting a few known commodities when it comes to throwing guys out there as rookies and expecting some return on it in your first couple years. That's what you're getting out of your first 3 rounds, or what you're hoping to get. So I think this accomplishes that. Overall strategy, like I said, kind of just taking the best on the board that fits your needs. I know that sounds simple, but a lot of teams get so bent out of shape about, hey, we really like this guy, and then somebody else is on the board that they like, but they haven't done the research on, and they pick the guy, that might not have been as good just because they know more about him. I know that sounds silly, but you see it every year. So I think it's looking at the board fresh when your turn comes up, having the best information you can around you, and picking that guy that's going to help you this next year immediately, because they're in a win now mindset. They're not looking. Obviously, you want to build and have this thing run for a while, but you got to get some talent that can come in and contribute right away. So other strategies that go into the draft real quick. I'm over my 10-minute limit already on this video, but real quick, just wanted to jump back to the comment I made earlier. So during that simulation, they actually had that number 5 pick for the Miami Dolphins going to Tristan Wirfs, the offensive tackle out of Iowa, number 1 tackle off the board. Everybody knows Miami needs a quarterback, but it got me thinking, why would that be something they do? Well, Miami's back on the board again at 18. Obviously, with them not taking Tua in this situation, he goes to the Chargers at number 6. Chargers only have that 1 first-round pick, so unless they trade back up, that's what they're getting. But I think they're happy there. They're pretty set up over there anyway, just needing a QB to compete with Tyrod Taylor. But it got me thinking about some of those veterans that are out there, and you look around, there's just not enough landing spots. Cam Newton, Jameis Winston, those guys. So you might see something like this with one of those couple teams, maybe even the Chargers or somebody, and then they trade back in for another pick. But, taking a chance on, hey, if we don't get our guy, we can go sign one of those other guys, assuming they're still available at the draft. Because it doesn't look like they're going anywhere anytime soon. But you could go get one of those. You could go get an Andy Dalton and limp by for another year. That's not the solution, but you can get a guy that you really like instead of reaching for a quarterback if you're not set on him, if there's injury concerns about Tua. Obviously, him being one that, does he benefit or not from this whole coronavirus and not being able to get him into the office and check him out and have your doctors look at him and stuff like that. So you're out on a limb a little bit. So at first it seemed crazy, and I was like, great, this is just a simulation that's going to screw up what reality is, but there might be some truth to that. You might see some weird jumps like that based on some of those veterans that are still available out there. So that's just kind of my 2 cents on that right there, and how you might see that play out for some of those guys. There's been a lot of questions, not necessarily Broncos related, but ultimately it does affect them based on who takes who in the draft right there. So because in this simulation, Herbert was actually still there at 15, which again I don't think will happen, but the way this played out, you never know. Somebody like that could fall if they're not dead set on him, and then Dolphins actually get him at pick 18 then. But so they do get their QB and the best tackle on the board. Great draft for them. Great first round anyway. So like I said, we'll just have to wait and see. But that's all the time I got for today. Like I said, I'm way over already. So I'll get off of here and stop talking. But I'm off for the next 2 days for the weekend here. Check the Twitter to see any other updates that might come up or any news that breaks over the weekend, and I'll be back on Monday. Stay safe and stay strong. Remember, check out Broncos Faction on Twitter. Have a good one.